How's everything look, Cindy? We good?
Looks absolutely great.
Okay, thanks. I want to thank you guys, especially a good thanks goes out to Brad, Feeks, and Estes for putting this all together. Some of you folks may know me, some of you may not, but um, I've been associated with the worldwide group or I've been associated with the worldwide user group for some time now, going back probably about 2007. Um, what we want to show you today is just kind of, I think it's appropriate. I've actually presented this before um, to the user group, but with just the way the economy is in the times and what's going on today, I thought it'd be appropriate to kind of dust it off and show it to you again. What we're going to do today is we're going to kind of go over a case study that we did for somebody, one of our clients, who is a pretty good sized P21 user. We want to really show you some of the struggles and things that they had with their freight and kind of give you an idea of some methods and best practices that you can use that might be able to help you folks here to either do a better job managing your freight spend or have the ability to recoup some costs, maybe some things you lost. You might see some similarities that you're doing. So with all that said, let's go ahead and let's go to the next slide and see what we got here. So again, Cindy gave you a little bit of bio on us. Just to give you an idea again, there's two companies here that I'm associated with. ShipSource has been associated with the user group for the longest period of time. I started this company to be a distributor for shipping software, but then over time you meet partners and you have associations and you get to rub elbows with some of the best experts in the industry. And so what we wanted to do with ShipSource is to make it a source for our clients to have access to some of these partners and some freight saving capabilities that these other companies may do. So that's why we started ShipSource. And then we started off as a reseller, and we were reselling a product called ShipLinks, which some of you folks may be familiar with. It was another company that I was a partner in. I split that group off mainly to market to more of a silo type of marketing network that I put together and associated with the reselling and try to get resellers that would be able to go out and provide a customized solution that helped enhance the products that they sold as well as move licenses. As you can see, I have 17 years experience working with the P21 group and Epicor. I worked with them before, when they were Activent Solutions. For folks that aren't familiar with ShipLinks, and it's now been rebranded as ShipVia. It's an enterprise software program. Some of the folks that I've been associated with in the user group are more established with probably using the WorldShip and using the WorldShip integration that comes with it. Some of you folks are probably now on the Epicor software product. But with our product, we've been around for a while. We've got the ability to provide the software for an enterprise. So we have unlimited locations, unlimited users. The idea is that you have all of your rates and all of your users all in one environment, very similar to how you do with P21. Since we've been
Ron, this is Brad. I'm sorry for jumping in, but I realized that I think your notes screen is displaying and not your main presentation screen. You might
sure.
Flip those around then. I'm squinting to read, and then I realized that was probably why.
Oh, okay. There we go. Is that better?
Looks great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So the integration that we've built with Profit 21 has grown over the years. So we've just been adding and adding and adding to it since 2005. And so now it's pretty full function system where we have pick ticket integration, we have transfer ticket integration, we have return ticket processing. We have the ability to real-time quoting outside of P21. It's not integrated into P21 yet, but there are some things you can do to do that. We have very numerous automated business rules that we run, and this system has the ability to capture your data and provide ways for you to access that information to improve your businesses. It's also multi-carrier and multimodal, so it does things like LTL and parcel, does truckload. You can process other types of modes and local couriers, even local couriers. So let's talk about why companies have issues with managing freight. The real key reason is that it sits outside your ERP. So it's probably the only thing that you purchase that you can't issue a purchase order for inside of Profit 21. So that itself creates a lot of issues because there's other things you can do with third parties, and there's a lot of different software packages and websites, and you have third party logistics companies and brokerages and consultants. So there's a lot of places that your data can be, which causes an issue because you've put a lot of money and investment into Profit 21 to manage your business, and this is done outside. The second problem that you run into is that the pricing doesn't fit how you price other products. If it did, you probably would be able to create a purchase order for it. But so you have different modes. Parcels different rating than LTL is. Couriers are going to be different as well. Truckload and some of these other modes, they're all spot quoted, so you have to call for those. So you have all these different mixes that are out there that don't fit the normal purchasing mode of how you buy things and how you price things. So you have that mix going on. And then what technology you do have, or if you have any at all, you're either doing it manual or trying to manage it manually, or you have limited capabilities. So you might have, like I mentioned earlier, you might have a parcel system that integrates, okay, but it's not networked. So, or it doesn't have business rules. So you run into things like that. And then you also have the way that most people manage it today is that you really don't know there's an issue until the bill comes. So once the invoice comes and you see that there's an astronomical expense on there for some reason or the other, you have no idea it happened, and it's too late to fix it at that point, and you've probably lost money at that point. So what we did is the best thing I thought I'd do for you today is we put a case study together. I met the company at one of the worldwide user group conferences a few years ago, and the guy comes up to me and he says, "Yeah, we're losing, over $700,000 a year in freight. What do you think about that?" I kind of looked at him in the eye and said, "Sounds like a good case study." And it is. So here it is today. So we're going to give it to you. The company has multiple locations. They're quoting, they're shipping, they're invoicing. It was all left up to each branch. So they really had no type of compliance within the whole organization. I'd say the majority of their shipments are outbound and transfer shipments. So they do have some outbound, some of their complexities with their outbound, you'll see a little bit later, where they may sell from one branch, fulfill for another. So there's things that they wanted to do with that. This was a company had excellent rates. They have buying power, and their rates are awesome. But the thing about rates, almost every company I talk to says they have great rates. Now, I'm not going to argue with them and say they don't, and that there's the possibility that they have bad rates, but I think every company has good rates for what they do. Rates are usually given out by volume, size, and buying power. and where the freight flows for a carrier. But the issue is that it's not about whether your rates are good or not, it's how you use them. So I'm sure the companies you're not out there putting purchase orders out where you've negotiated rates with a vendor and then you just pay more money just to do it. It's not how it works, but that happens every day in freight. You have companies that have great rates, but they pay more than they should. And so what our job is to do with our technology is to help them not do that. So to help them fix those errors that they have. This company was also using the UPS World Ship. They had the same same integration, I think, that the Worldwide User Group distributes. They also had FedEx ship managers in some places. They had LTO carriers, and contracts and relationships were set up with the local branches. So the local branches really were in charge of determining how the freight went out, and they may be giving it to their friends for all we know. So they had a loss that was over $700,000 a year. That's a big chunk, obviously, of lossing. Most of the reasoning behind it is we found out that, for one thing, is they had a poor system of quoting freight. They had a poor system for selection, or carrier selection, and on top of carrier selection too, when you have good rates, if you utilize the same carriers within the same group and you're not going outside that realm, the volume's going in there, you can actually trade better than the rates you already have. So that might have been an issue with them too. They had poor compliance with billing their customers and collecting up freight, and they had poor compliance with assigning freight costs for these branch transfers or these movements that they made from a selling branch to a fulfilling branch. And then they didn't have a standard freight policy that they managed or pushed throughout their organization. So there's a lot of things that were leading to these issues that they were having. So it's not just something that I go out and get carriers for them and put them in a system and allow them to rate shop. It went deeper than just rate shopping. And I found that to be true with a lot of companies that I talked to. So we looked at this problem from a two-step solution that we would put together for them. The first solution was to use technology to get them all on a enterprise system and have them all singing from the same hymnal. So we got them on this process. And then the second thing was, once we got them on the technology, then we would put a manual together that was specific to their business. So the first thing that we did with the proposed solution is we needed to find a way for them to select carriers better. So how do they make their choices when they're going to put a customer into a freight carrier? And then we wanted to look at how it simplifies the terms that they use. So the payment terms were set up so that when they put somebody into the payment term, the system would know how much to calculate for freight. So, and some of you probably do this today. You may mark your freight up. There may be instances where you don't charge for freight. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a way to automate how the payment terms flowed through with the order. The other thing then we needed to do, which they had some automation, again, they had their World Ship or their UPS was integrated, but we wanted to be able to integrate all their modes that they utilized. So that meant being able to put all their rates for all their carriers in one system and have them accessible to everybody to use for routing and for shipment execution. So for routing, to me, is routing can be either just getting somebody a freight quote from a sales standpoint and telling them that, hey, we believe that it's going to, here's an estimate. We believe it's going to cost X amount of dollars to ship this shipment to you next Tuesday. And then there's the execution part of it. Now it's physically prepared in the warehouse and it's ready to ship. And now we have to make sure that we're shipping it out by an optimal carrier for our company. And then that we're going to be billing that customer correctly for that. And then after the execution happens, then the update then back into P21. So some of these companies that we talk to only have one-way integration, which is, hey, I can pull an address and I can ship to an address. But then when it comes to doing a ship confirmation or updating the system, that's all done manual. So what we wanted to do on the back end, that's where they were manual. We wanted to make sure that we updated the system at the point of shipment in real time with the things that the shipping information, so that they could then account for the data and then start making this data useful to them. And then once we get the data we're supposed to be, then how do we report on it? What do we do to track it? How do we manage that data to make it useful? So we put all this together, put it in a testing environment, and started working out the bugs and the flow of the process. So they had a total process overhaul. So before we, distributed that out to any branch that used it, we wanted to run it through the gamut and through a series of tests to make sure that all these points that we were trying to fix actually were fixed. So we settled down, got everything together. We've got all the testing down. We went back and made sure all the data was going where we're supposed to be getting. We were collecting the data correctly. It was billing correctly. And then once we did that, we moved to the next step, which was then they put together a standard operating procedure. And I have to admit, most of the companies that I work with don't do a good job on number two. After they do number one, they don't do a good job on number two. They just figure that the software is going to fix everything. But what was good about number two is that it provided them, again, a way for everybody to kind of sing from the same book, but it also gave them a way to provide enforcement and training when new people came along. Because before this solution was there, everybody was like a cowboy. They were like cowboys. They were kind of doing what they thought was right. And then when the next people came in and they were hired, they told them how to do the wrong thing. So they kept reinforcing the wrong thing over and over again till it became, oh, that's the way we do things here. So this is the summary of kind of the things that we put together. Now, the slide's not a mistake. So people wonder why you have a golf thing in there, but I love golf. So I'm going to use a golf analogy. But so one of the jokes that we kind of have when I play golf with my buddies is that the bets are won on the first hole before you even tee off, or they're lost on the first hole before you tee off. And in this case, these guys were losing before they started. So when we break down what they were doing here, when they would take an order, they would route it by a carrier that costs too much money. And then in often cases, they would either mark it up incorrectly, sometimes even fail to invoice the freight altogether. So they were losing the money before the order was even saved and in the system, and before the pay tickets were printed. So what we wanted to do is, again, we focused on at order entry and two main things here. Making sure they selected the correct shipping terms, and so that those terms flowed through and the software then did the math correctly. And then the second thing was to make sure that when they were routing that carrier, that they had a tool to go to determine what was the best way to pay for it. So if it was a parcel solution, if it was a parcel system, for instance, a lot of folks know this and some may not, but I can ship something ground and have it get there tomorrow. But if I'm sending it next day air and it doesn't need to be delivered next day air, it's going to cost a lot more money. And if I'm not charging the client, it costs me a lot more money than it should. So we wanted to make sure that they had the ability to determine how to select a carrier and get it there on the delivery time that they wanted by the most optimal carrier. So we provided them a way to do that. Then the second step that we did, so now next thing we have to do is we got to tear into the integration. So we have to improve their integration. So first of all, we need to make sure they had integration that took into account all their carriers. So they only had parcel before, remember? So the first thing we did, we routed, when we pull data in on the download from Profit 21, we're pulling in the header and the detail information from the pick ticket. And from that information, if we get it there, if we can't, we have to jump somewhere else. We'll jump to get it. But the main thing we want to do is find out, okay, how's it rated or routed? So in some cases, they would already have a carrier selected that was the optimal carrier, or they would just rate shop. They would put in a rate shop code or use the rate shop code to have it rate shop at the system level. The other thing that happens during the download of the integration is we're pulling in the accurate ship to address. And sometimes, and usually this is where you would stop with a normal, like a world ship integration. Hey, we're pulling in the carrier and we're pulling in the address. Where our system goes a little bit further, or where other systems do too, that you may be using, we want to have the system be able to do other things if the order calls for it. If it's a third party, I need to pull the bill to address. If it's international, I need to pull the commodity information. Are there business rules that need to be applied? The payment responsibility. Hey, if it's a free freight situation, I need to capture the cost of the freight, but I have to send back zero freight so it doesn't charge the client. So we had to do business rules like that. Or sometimes there's business rules that we notice that the operator may forget to do something. So we display them a message to remind them. So there's different things that we can do in the download of information that go beyond what you may already have. Then the second thing is now we got to do the upload. And this is where most companies are. I would say it's about half of the companies do this, half don't, if I were to take a poll. So in our situation, we transfer that information in real time. So we're writing back the freight cost that the customer is going to pay. We're writing back the carrier that was utilized, because if they rate shop, we don't know who's used until we create the label. We send back the ship date, we send back the tracking number, and then any other information that they might find interesting that they need on there. So it's a custom update. But those are typically the 4 things that get sent every time. And then for this particular situation, we also had to send back some data to some custom fields. There was information that we needed to capture to fix these problems that they weren't doing. So we found a field, or they put a field together so that we could capture the carrier net cost. So this is their cost. This is the discounted freight cost that they get based on their contract. So we wanted to write that back. And then we also had the transfer tables were very limited in what we could do with them. So they put some fields in so that we could send back freight and tracking information. to the transfer tables. And then we have some business logic that's running when we pull the selling branch and the fulfilling branch. So, in the pick tickets, how it determines who's selling it and who's fulfilling it. We captured that information and we wrote those to attributes so that we could utilize business logic to make sure that we stored that information and help these guys determine who was responsible for freight. And then we have some folks that want to do auto ship confirmation. So they don't want to have to go through the manual process of confirming a shipment. So once everything was all in alignment and we'd updated everything, we wanted to be able to tell Profit 21 to auto confirm it so we could eliminate a step in the process, or in a step where it possibly could commit some type of error that costs money. So after we put the integration in place, we have a couple different scenarios that we standardized. So the standardization of some normal pick ticket that's shipping, the operator would go in and scan in or enter in a pick ticket into the shipping screen. The ship method, the shipping address, the freight terms, this information was imported into the shipping screen. At that point, if the system was designated for a carrier, it would, so if it was already routed, like UPS ground, it would automatically calculate the freight and give them the transit time. If it was a rate shop, it would then allow them to then go ahead and choose from a list of carriers, rank from lowest to highest cost and transit time on who would be the optimal carrier. And then once they selected the carrier, then they would then post the shipment, and then we would then send back those 4 pieces of information plus the other information that we needed to run some of our analytics and do some of the things that we wanted to do to solve those problems. Most notably we sent back 2 rates. So when we rate the shipment, we would rate it twice. So I'd have my cost or the shipper's cost, and then I'd have the client's cost, what we're going to charge them for freight. And then we would send those back to 2 separate fields. Now we have them in 2 separate fields. Now we can report on them. And then we would also then determine who paid for it at that point. And that's what happens in the next step. So in the next one, this is something they typically do. So they have a lot of order. They have a lot of stock in different branches across the U.S. And when they put an order into P21, it can tell them, where this order should be fulfilled from. Is it in my stock or is it in somebody else's stock? And then they can choose who to order that through and then have it ship out of that location. So one of the problems that they were having is that when they did this and shipped from another location, oftentimes they weren't billing for freight. And then if who's the freight get charged to? They didn't have any mechanism in place to divide it up. So they were not doing it at all. Instead of doing it manual, they just didn't do it at all. So in this situation, what we want to have happen is go through the same steps that we just had with the a normal pick ticket, but have the ability now to run business logic, capture who sold it, who's fulfilling it, and then be able to update P21 so that now they know who's responsible and how to account for that money and make sure it ends up in the right freight bucket or GL code. And then the second thing was to make sure they got billed out to the customer correctly. The next scenario is a transfer ticket. Now, I know that some Profit 21 clients are, some of them may only be 1 or 2 locations. They don't do transfers. But if you do transfers, running into it a lot more. I don't know if the Epicor system does this or not, but I do know that you can't do it with the World Ship System integration. So the transfer ticket, we're pulling the information from the transfer table. So when I scan or enter a transfer ticket into the shipping screen, it knows, we have business logic that knows that based on how it's numbered, is that it's a transfer ticket. So instead of it going and looking at the pick ticket first and not finding it and having a waiting for, and getting an error and then having it go and look at the transfer ticket, we just we wrote business logic and have it go there right away. So it goes to the transfer ticket, it pulls the data in, and then once the shipment is rated, we're capturing that cost, the actual net cost. So we don't, it's a transfer, obviously we don't have to worry about a customer cost here. And then once it's processed, we're updating the transfer ticket with the freight cost and the tracking number. And obviously the importance of the tracking number is that the company that's looking for this transfer, they can go in and see it was shipped, and they can go in and see what the tracking number is in case they want to see when it's going to hit their dock. So they have visibility to the inbound shipment coming in. And then of course the cost then is utilized to run reports and determine how the GL coding is done and who pays for it. So now once all those three different scenarios are accomplished, now it comes down to how the freight gets billed in P21. So depending on how charges are billed, you have the ability to send freight back either being marked up or marked down, or zero if in case you're shipping it on your own dime. So we have the ability to look at it. So the terms field, we have business logic that runs on the terms field that we're pulling off the pick ticket. And then that tells us how, who's going to pay, how much they're going to pay. So we look at that. And then we created a custom field to store the carrier freight. So we talked about that. So when we write back to the fields, we're writing back the freight charge that gets charged to the client, and then the freight charge that gets charged to the shipper, our user. And then they use the delta between those fields to measure profit and loss. So the idea then is with these folks is that we want that one bucket to be more than the other when it comes down to that. And then the freight charges, again, once you go through the ship confirmation process, is automatically then sent to the invoice. And then these folks use reports then to not only measure how well we're doing, but they also look for errors. So it also helps them pinpoint if there's an error and they see something in a freight invoice, they can go down, they can drill down and find it. And then they can go to the appropriate people and correct it and make sure it doesn't happen again. And then other times too, we find with some of these errors that are happening that we needed to tweak the process. So we went back in and we tightened down the code or the operating procedure, and or both. And then finally, this is what, they put the standing operating procedure together. And the nice thing about this procedure is that it's not just about how to operate the shipping software, but it's about how to do everything where freight is touched in this process. So it tells them, hey, when you're doing order entry, here's how you select the terms. So that it does everything from that standpoint. And then of course it's a document that's a work in process. You don't not go back and update it and keep it up to date. with that. And then this is a manual that they use for training folks. Okay, so to summarize, I'm going to go over the things that we added and the deliverables that we were able to provide to them to help solve the problems that they had. So, so every location is using the same software platform. No rogue players, no manual players. And believe me, if they get an invoice, we know when something's outside the system, so they're able to go back and correct that problem. All their rates are loaded in the software. So every LTL carrier they use, every parcel carrier they use is loaded in the software. So there's not any type of carrier service they cannot rate. Then we put together an enterprise routing tool for them so that they can select before it gets to the warehouse if they want to find a rate quote or determine a carrier. We gave them a tool to do that. Then we provided them with the integration, the two-way integration, so that they could execute shipments better. And then we provided the data capture for them, the information so that they can analyze the data to fix their problems and measure the problems. And then we gave them the business rules to account for selling and fulfilling branches, the capture freight costs and transfers, the capture freight costs on accurately billing clients, and then the reports and or queries to compare and track costs internally. And I know that they use some of the data change rules and stuff. They've got a few data change rules that they put together to, to pull some reports out of P21. So I'd say the majority of the reporting is done in P21 because all the data that they need has been transferred there and stored there. And then the user manual. So what were the results? Well, of course, they went from a loss to a profit center. So they were able to now recoup all the costs that they had for freight. And that a big portion of that dealt with how they billed their clients. So they were able to invoice their clients accurately for freight and collect on it. And they eliminated a lot of the no charges, the stuff that wasn't getting billed at all. The branches were then able to be able to determine what their GL coding and what freight they were responsible for. So who was appropriately charged for some of these transfers and drop shipments that they were doing. Each branch now uses the software like it's religion. They don't go outside of it. So they comply. And part of that too is if you make the tool easy enough for them, they'll use it. So if they were to go to a website and have to create a bill of lading by hand, it's obviously a lot harder. And most workers don't want to do it if it's hard. They want to do the easiest thing. So it made it easier for them to use the software, which made them comply a lot easier with the things that we had put in place. Then, of course, then the reporting was able to help them get to a profit center and then help them find errors and correct errors to their processes. And then, of course, the operating manual is a great tool that helps them enforce the procedures and also to train their new employees. So that's the end of the freight study. The next thing, I just wanted to put this slide in here to let you know is that, again, ShipSource has partners and resellers and folks that do other things that can help clients reduce freight costs, and be more than happy to introduce anybody who's looking to maybe get better rates, have help negotiating, interested in doing freight payment and audit. a newer thing that's out there today. There's tools for figuring out what items go in what boxes. There's actually systems out there today that will you can have an order come down with the dimensions of your products, and it'll build a box. It'll physically just build the box of the right size. So it's right size boxing. And then there are folks that I know that can help with process flow automation. I do a little bit of that myself, just being around the block. And then of course there's business intelligence technology. How can we utilize the freight data that we have to improve our operations? And other than that, I appreciate your time, and I will open up for questions. I think it's about almost on time for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. Yes, we do have some questions. Let's see. The first question is, looking at the poll results, most attendees don't have a shipping solution in place. What would be the justification for acquiring such a system?
Can you repeat that to me again?
Absolutely. Looking at the poll results, most attendees don't have a shipping solution in place. What would be the justification for acquiring such a system?
I think any justification is that if you don't know, I mean, so a lot of people don't know what they don't know. I would say you would need to have one. If you're doing LTL and parcel, I would say that you should probably have one. A parcel system, if you're making mistakes on parcel, it's only gonna be a few bucks here and there when you're doing it. And hopefully you're not creating the same problem every day, every shipment. But if you're doing more complex freight, like heavier freight, like truckload and LTL, a mistake could cost you hundreds of dollars. And I would say that most of the clients that we've been able to help are doing a good mix of both, or they're more heavy LTL. But I would say that I'm seeing that. The other thing is, if you're an enterprise location, like if you have probably more than 2 locations, there's an opportunity that if you don't have eyes on the operation, then there's a chance that the folks are just doing what they think is right, and they've passed it on, and you may be making mistakes. So I'd say the best thing to do is, there are a lot of folks that aren't using software. The main thing to do is to look and see if you're losing money and where you're losing it, and then give me a call. I can tell you. I mean, and believe me, folks, a lot of people know me. There's a lot of folks I know from the user group that do not use me, that I'm friends with. If you just don't have any idea, you can call me, and I'd be more or less likely to help you with even buying from me. So.
Not muted or unmuted. All right. Do you have support for regional freight providers, for example, Speedy in the Midwest?
Yeah, we do have several regional freight carriers that are on there. If we don't have them, we have the mechanisms for adding them. So I just got back from the parcel forum a few weeks ago and met some new carriers, and we just add them. So our plan is to have as many carriers that we can possibly have. We want our customers to have the best of everything. So if they've any chance that they run into a carrier, I want them to have it. So I have to look at that one. I'm not sure if we have that one or not, but if we did, we'd add it for you.
All right, next question. When rates are uploaded into P21, where do they land? To the sales order, the AR, or otherwise?
It depends. They are updated on the order. Okay, there used to be a table in there. I don't know if the table's still available or not because of the moving to the new API and stuff. But there was some data that we wrote to a ClipperShip table. It's called a ClipperShip table. And then there's other, and then I know we do also update the OE header and OE detail tables.
All right. Freight damage is a real issue, especially with LTL. Is there a way to prioritize LTL so you pick the reliable and careful ones whenever possible?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the first thing is you have to have your rates all in one place that you can query them. So yeah, absolutely. The issue that we run into is that if there's no routing tool that's available, the operators run off of tribal knowledge, or they just go to various websites and they plug in the same data over and over and over to try to find out which is the best carrier to use. So there definitely is some benefit to having all your rates in one place, being able to query all those rates so you can determine what's the best way, because you can lose hundreds of dollars easily on misrouting shipment.
Okay, another one. The question here revolves around cost. How often do shipping systems like ShipSource normally pay for themselves?
Uh, it depends. I mean, it's a situational thing, and the reason, and I'm not trying to skate around this, but we're a custom solution, so we're not like an out of the box solution that one size fits all. So we're physically probably addressing an issue that you have, and we're probably you could probably already tell me how much you're losing with that problem, just like this case study did in that case. So it's going to depend from place to place. Now, I have some clients that since we're a subscription service, our cost is probably somewhere between 5 to 10 cents of UPS shipment, for instance. Sometimes we just add that into the freight cost and it pays for itself the day you use it.
All right, I don't believe we have any other question. Oh, one just came in. How does ShipSource update the P21 database through the API layer or through the API layer or at a lower level?
So we do have the API integration, so we do it through the API layer. I'm not specific. I don't know the specifics. It's new to us, and I'm not the engineer. So, but I can tell you that we are doing it. It doesn't do the same that it used to with the updating tables, especially if it's hosted by Epicor. And what I'm talking about is that we used to be able to pass package level detail back. So if you had 4 packages in an order, I give you 4 lines of data. So it would say, here's first package, second package, third package, fourth package. With the API layer today, they don't allow you to do that. They only allow us to update the total. So you get one tracking number back, you get a total freight cost back on that. Now, that could change, hopefully does change moving forward, and that enough people can lean on them to make that change. But that's something that we noticed from our clients who went from the old to the new.